The dying battlefield. The war was almost over. Or at least that's what Commander Riley wanted to believe. Outside the window of his rescue ship, space looked like a graveyard. Broken ships drifted silently, their metal bodies torn apart. Fires burned in the dark like dying stars, and the faint echoes of explosions still vibrated through the void. No one spoke on the bridge. Everyone was too tired, too broken to care anymore. Riley stood near the front window, staring into the endless black. His ship, the Hopebringer, had been sent to search for survivors after the Battle of Arion Prime. But everyone knew what that really meant. Collecting the dead, most rescue teams had already turned back, saying there was nothing left. Still, Riley refused to leave. Something inside him wouldn't let go. "Commander," said Sergeant Miller, his voice dry and low. "We've scanned this area 3 times, nothing alive out there." Riley didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the radar screen. Then a faint signal blinked. Weak, fading but real. "Wait," he said, "there's something—" A distress beacon. The crew leaned closer. "It's an alien frequency," the technician said. "Probably one of them, sir." The air grew cold. No one wanted to save an alien, especially not after what they had done. "Turn the ship toward the signal," Riley ordered. The crew hesitated. "Sir, it's dangerous," Miller said. "It could be a trap, or one of their ships leaking radiation." Riley's voice turned firm. "If it's a life, we save it, human or not." The engines roared softly as the ship glided closer. Through the haze of smoke and drifting debris, a small escape pod appeared. It was half-broken, spinning slowly, covered in cracks and burns. "Lock it in with the magnetic arm," Riley said. They pulled the pod inside the ship's bay, metal screeching as it touched the deck. Inside the pod, there was silence. The glass window was fogged from inside. Riley took a deep breath, placed his hand on the release lever, and pulled with a hiss. The hatch opened, releasing a strange blue mist. Inside lay an alien, tall, silver-skinned, his armor shattered, his body twisted, half his face was burned, and strange glowing veins pulsed weakly under his skin. One of the medics whispered, "It's one of the Vereen. Sir, they killed thousands of us." Riley knelt beside the alien, feeling his heart still beating faintly. "He's paralyzed," said the medic, scanning him. "Spinal damage? Maybe brain trauma. Can we save him?" Riley asked. The medic frowned. "We can try, but why would we?" Everyone stared at the commander, waiting. Riley's voice was quiet but steady. "Because leaving him to die makes us no better than them." The medic looked down, ashamed, and began the treatment. They carried the alien to the infirmary, attaching tubes, sensors, and oxygen. His breathing was slow but steady now, the room filled with the rhythmic sound of machines keeping him alive. Later that night, the crew gathered in the hall whispering. "This is madness," one said. "We lost our friends because of them." "Commander's gone soft," another replied. Riley walked past them silently, pretending not to hear. But deep down, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Hours passed. The alien's eyes opened suddenly upon bright blue, shining faintly under the dim lights. Riley leaned closer. The alien looked at him, confused, afraid. He tried to move but couldn't. His body trembled in pain. Then, with great effort, he spoke, his voice broken, heavy. "Why, help me." Riley didn't answer at first. He just looked at him. This enemy who had fought against his kind, now helpless and alone. "Because someone has to," Riley said quietly. "Not everything needs to end in hate." The alien blinked slowly. As if trying to understand, a single tear, glowing faint blue, rolled down his cheek. Then his eyes closed again, sinking into a deep sleep outside the ship. The stars kept burning, but for Riley, something had changed. He felt it deep inside. This act, this one choice, could change everything. He didn't know that saving one broken alien would start something much greater, something that would shake the entire galaxy. For in that quiet moment between enemy and savior, a fragile seed of hope was born, and it was only the beginning. The alien no one wanted. The next morning aboard the Hopebringer began with silence, a silence too heavy for comfort. Every crew member avoided the infirmary, pretending it didn't exist, pretending the alien inside it wasn't breathing through their ship's air. But whispers traveled faster than light. By breakfast, everyone knew. Commander Riley had saved one of them, a Vereen, a sworn enemy of humanity. Riley sat alone in his cabin, eyes fixed on the digital log. He had written a simple line, Subject stable, paralyzed response to sound. But his mind refused to settle. He kept hearing the alien's weak, trembling voice. Why? Help me? That voice echoed inside him like a question he couldn't stop answering. When Riley finally entered the infirmary, the lights dimmed automatically. Cale, that was the name on the alien's identification tag, lay motionless on the medical bed. Tubes ran through his body, carrying glowing liquid that shimmered blue under the ship's lights. His skin looked like silver stone cracking under stress. His breathing slow but steady. Riley checked the monitor, watching the alien's pulse flicker weakly. "You're not dying today," he whispered, even though he wasn't sure if Cale could hear him. Behind him, the door slid open. Sergeant Miller stepped in, face tight with anger. "Sir, the crew's on edge." "Because of him," Riley said quietly. "Because you brought him here," Miller snapped. "We lost half our people fighting his kind and now we're keeping one alive?" Riley turned to face him, his voice calm but sharp. "He's not the war, Miller. He's just someone left behind, same as us." Miller clenched his jaw. "The men think he's dangerous, sir. Some are saying they'll handle it themselves if command won't." Riley's gaze hardened. "If anyone lays a hand on him, they'll answer to me." Hours passed, but tension only grew thicker. In the mess hall, the crew murmured under their breath. One soldier slammed his tray down. "We feed that monster while our friends rot in space?" Another whispered, "Maybe he's sending signals right now." Calling his fleet here, fear turned to anger, and anger turned to something darker. That night, the hum of the engines was broken by a faint alarm. Riley rushed to the medical deck. The door was open. The lights flickering, Cale's pod had been unplugged. The cables torn apart, and standing beside him was one of the engineers, hands shaking. I thought, he stammered. Riley grabbed him by the collar. "You thought you could play God?" The man's face went pale. "He's the enemy." "No," Riley said coldly. "He's a life." The commander reconnected the tubes, reactivated the machines. Cale's body jerked, breath returning in ragged gasps. For a moment, Riley thought he was too late. Then Cale's eyes opened, glowing faintly again. He stared at Riley, confused. Scared but alive. Riley exhaled with relief. "You're safe now." But Cale didn't answer immediately. He looked around, eyes full of memories Riley couldn't understand. Finally, in broken English, he said, "Humans hate us." Riley hesitated. "Not all." Cale's lip trembled, his voice barely a whisper. "Then, why save me?" "Because someone has to end this circle," Riley said softly. "Someone has to start something different." Cale blinked slowly, like a child learning to see light again. Then something strange happened. A single tear slid down his cheek. Glowing brighter than before, the machine started beeping faster. His heartbeat rising, the medic rushed in, checking the scanners, his cells. "They're reacting to emotion." "What do you mean?" Riley asked. "His species, their emotions generate energy, sir. He's healing because he feels something." Riley turned back to Cale. Stunned hope. That's what he was seeing for the first time. Not just in the alien, but in himself later in the command room. The crew gathered again, Miller reported quietly. "Command received your transmission, sir." "They want him returned to the base for disposal." The words hit like a punch. "Disposal?" Riley repeated. "That's what they call it now," Miller said bitterly. "Mercy by destruction." Riley stood silent for a long moment, staring out at the stars. Then he turned to his second officer. "We won't follow that order." Miller's eyes widened. "Sir, that's disobedience." "You'll lose your rank." "I'd rather lose my rank," Riley interrupted, "than my humanity." As the ship sailed quietly through the darkness, the crew unaware of what was coming, Cale lay in his bed, his faint light growing stronger each hour. And in his sleep, his lips moved as if whispering a word no one could hear, a word older than both their species, a word that meant faith. But far beyond on the ruined edge of the galaxy, the Varine Empire had noticed something. One of their lost signals had been reactivated, Cale's distress beacon, and now warships began to move, engines burning through the void, straight toward the Hopebringer, because saving one alien had not gone unnoticed, and soon humanity would learn the true cost of mercy. Whispers of the past, the stars around the Hopebringer looked calm, but inside the ship tension hung like smoke. No one slept that night. Every corridor felt colder, every sound sharper. They had disobeyed direct orders, and worse, an alien fleet was moving toward them. Riley stood at the bridge window, watching the endless dark, his reflection split by the glow of distant fire. Behind him, Miller broke the silence. "Command keeps asking for updates, sir." "Tell them we're still searching for human survivors," Riley said without turning. "They won't question what they already believe." Down in the med bay, Cale's body twitched under the glow of the scanners. He was dreaming, whispering words in his own tongue. The machines translating fragments: fire, betrayal, exile. The computer murmured in its metallic voice. Riley stepped closer, watching his face tighten in pain. "He's remembering," the medic said softly. Riley frowned. "Can you record it?" The medic nodded, connecting a neural link. "His memories are fragmented, but the brain patterns show trauma from execution protocols." Riley's heart sank. Execution? The memory appeared on the screen like a ghost. Cale kneeling before a council of his own kind. Chains of light around his body. Eyes full of fury and grief. "You refused the cleansing order," one alien voice thundered. "You protected the enemy." Cale shouted back, "They were civilians. Children." The council's leader raised a staff of energy. "You are stripped of rank, of life, of honor." Then the image shattered in static. The room fell silent. Riley whispered, "He tried to save humans, and they killed him for it." When Cale awoke, his breathing was rough, his voice weak. "You saw?" Riley nodded. "You saved us before the war ended, didn't you?" Cale closed his eyes. "I failed everyone. My people, your people, all burned." Riley placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't fail. You were betrayed." Cale opened his eyes again, and for the first time there was anger there. Not hate, but a fire that refused to die. Suddenly the ship's alarm blared, red lights flashing through the corridors. Miller's voice echoed through the comms. "Commander? Multiple warp signatures inbound, Vereen warships." Riley rushed to the bridge, the crew already in motion. "How did they find us?" The navigator shouted. "The alien distress beacon," Miller said grimly. "It activated itself 5 minutes ago." Riley turned to Cale's room through the intercom. "Kyle, did you—" But Cale's weak voice came back. "Not me. It's the Empire. They tracked the Fallen." The first blast hit, shaking the entire ship. Sparks flew across the consoles. Riley barked, "Evasive pattern Delta. Shields to full." Outside, 3 massive warships glowed like black suns. Their weapons cutting through the darkness. Kyle struggled to sit up. Pulling wires from his body, he looked at the medic. "Take me to the commander. You're too weak," she said. Cale's voice deepened. "If I stay here, you all die." Moments later, Cale limped onto the bridge, the crew freezing at the sight of him. His eyes were brighter now, almost burning blue, the same color as the energy beams hammering against their shields. Riley turned, startled. "You should be resting." Cale ignored the command, staring at the enemy fleet through the window. "I know their tactics," he said. "Their formation hides a command vessel. Destroy it, and the others will retreat," Miller scoffed. "And we're supposed to trust you?" Cale looked at him coldly. "You already trust your commander, and he trusts me." Riley didn't hesitate. "Navigator, plot their center line. Gunnery, target the energy spikes at 37 degrees. The ship dove between 2 enemy cruisers, plasma fire slicing past like lightning. The crew worked as one, and for a heartbeat the impossible seemed within reach. Cale's voice guided them through every maneuver, his tone calm, focused, almost human. Then a massive blast struck the rear engine, throwing everyone off their feet. "Main power offline," someone screamed. "We're dead in the water." Smoke filled the bridge, alarms howling, but Cale stood motionless, eyes closed. He raised his trembling hands, strange symbols glowing along his arms. "What are you doing?" Riley asked. "Giving you power," Cale whispered. The ship's systems flickered, then roared back to life. Shields surged. Weapons glowed brighter than before. Miller stared. "He's feeding energy from his own body." Cale gritted his teeth. "Don't waste it. Fire." The main cannon unleashed a blinding beam, cutting straight through the enemy command ship. A silent explosion bloomed like a second sun, scattering the rest of the fleet. The shockwave hit the Hopebringer, throwing it off course but leaving it alive. When the light stabilized, Cale collapsed to the floor. Motionless, Riley rushed to him, catching him before he fell. Kale's eyes barely opened, his voice faint. Now they know. I live. They'll send more, Riley whispered. Then we'll be ready. Far away, across the stars, a signal reached the Vereen High Command. An officer entered the throne chamber, bowing low. The traitor lives. The Supreme Lord turned, his armor gleaming red. Then bring me his head and the human who protects him. Back on the Hopebringer, Riley stared out into the void. He knew what was coming. Saving Kale wasn't mercy anymore. It was rebellion. And somewhere deep in the darkness, humanity had just declared war without saying a single word. The human and the outcast. The Hopebringer drifted through the aftermath of battle like a wounded animal. Its hull cracked, lights flickering weakly. Engines half dead inside, the air smelled of smoke and iron. The silence broken only by the soft hiss of damaged vents. They had survived the first Vereen assault, but barely. Now the crew worked in grim silence, welding, sealing, patching what they could. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before more warships came. Commander Riley stood at the viewport, his reflection blurred by scratches on the glass. Behind him, the sound of footsteps, soft, dragging, made him turn. Kyle was standing pale and trembling, one arm supported by a metal brace, his veins still glowing faint blue. You should be resting, Riley said, voice heavy with concern. Kale shook his head slowly. I have rested enough. Commander, his voice was stronger now, more confident. I have something to show you, he said. They walked together through the narrow corridors toward the lower deck. The ship creaked around them, tired but alive. Riley glanced at him. What is it you're hiding, Kale? Kale's expression was unreadable. Not hiding. Remembering. He stopped before a sealed cargo door, placed his palm on the scanner to everyone's shock. The door hissed open, something only high-level humans could normally do. Riley frowned. How? Kale smiled faintly. I learned your codes while unconscious. I had to understand my savior. Inside the cargo bay were crates of damaged weapons, broken drones, and one small training chamber. Kale stepped into the center and turned. You humans fight with courage, he said. But you lack understanding of Vereen energy. He raised his hand, and a soft wave of light flowed from his fingertips, forming symbols in the air. Riley stared in awe. What is that? Kale answered quietly. Memory energy. My people use it to connect minds, to teach, to share pain. The light grew, surrounding Riley, and suddenly visions flooded his mind. Kale's world, once beautiful, now burned to ash. Children running from fire, soldiers screaming. Kyle himself standing before a crowd begging for peace. Then the vision vanished, leaving Riley breathless. Kyle's voice broke the silence. That is what I tried to stop. Riley nodded slowly. You tried to save us. And they called you traitor. Kale lowered his gaze. And now I am both enemy and exile. The commander placed a hand on his shoulder. Not anymore. On this ship you're part of us, but not everyone agreed. In the next few days, resentment grew among the crew. They watched Kyle walk the halls, his alien glow lighting the shadows. Some called him ghost, others demon. One night, as Kale entered the mess hall, the room went silent. A soldier muttered, Why is he eating our food? Kale stopped, his hand tightening. I do not need your food. He turned to leave, but another soldier threw a metal cup that clanged against the wall beside him. Riley appeared in the doorway like thunder. Enough. His voice echoed, cutting through the tension. This ship doesn't carry enemies anymore. Only survivors. The room fell silent, shame crawling across the crew's faces. Later, alone in the engine room, Riley found Kale staring at the stars through a maintenance window. You defended me, Kale said quietly, even when your people hate me. Riley shrugged. Maybe because I know what hate turns us into. Kale turned his head slightly. You're different from the others. Maybe, Riley said. Or maybe I just remember what mercy feels like. Suddenly, the alarm lights flashed red, the console screamed. Miller's voice crackled over the comms. Commander! Unknown signal approaching, fast! Riley rushed to the bridge, Kale following close behind. The radar showed a single craft, small, fast, and cloaked in distortion fields. It's not Vereen, the technician said. Signal doesn't match their code. Kale stepped forward, eyes narrowing. That's a bounty craft. Riley looked at him. What do you mean? Kale's tone darkened. My empire sent assassins for me. They use hunters who feed on energy. The ship trembled as the enemy uncloaked. a sleek black vessel shaped like a dagger. "Brace for impact," Riley shouted. Energy beams slashed across the hull. Cutting deep, the Hopebringer fired back. But the hunter ship was too fast, circling like a predator. Cale's eyes glowed brighter, his veins pulsing with light. He stepped to the console, ignoring the crew's fear. "Let me help." Riley hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Kyle placed his hands on the ship's energy core. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire vessel surged with blue light, the engines roaring like beasts. The Hopebringer turned sharply, matching the hunter's speed. The alien systems responded to Cale's touch as if alive. "Fire main cannons," Riley ordered. Twin beams tore through the darkness, slicing the hunter ship clean in half. The explosion painted the void in colors no human eye had ever seen. When the silence returned, the crew cheered, but Cale collapsed to his knees. Smoke rose from his skin, his veins dimming. Riley caught him before he fell. "You'll kill yourself doing this." Cale's lips curled into a faint smile. Better to burn for something than to fade for nothing. Later that night, Riley found Cale resting in the medbay again. Outside, the ship floated near an abandoned moon. Its light cold and pale, Riley sat beside him, whispering, "You don't have to prove anything anymore." Cale's voice was weak but steady. "I'm not proving. I'm remembering who I was." Then his gaze sharpened. "And soon you'll remember too." Riley frowned. "What do you mean?" Cale closed his eyes. "The weapon. The Vareen are building it again. And I know where." Riley's heart froze. "What weapon?" Cale opened his eyes, glowing like dying stars. "The same one that burned my world. And yours will be next." Outside, beyond the silence of space, a massive shape moved in the shadows. A weapon so vast it covered the light of the stars. And as the Hopebringer sailed unknowingly closer to it, Cale whispered the last words before sleep took him again. They called it the Oblivion Core. The secret weapon space was quiet again, but not peaceful. The Hopebringer floated like a shadow between the stars, its wounded hull barely holding together, its crew restless for a few moments. Everyone thought they were safe, but safety, Riley knew, was a lie that lasted only until the next signal appeared, and that signal came faster than anyone expected. A deep pulse rippled through the ship's sensors, one too strong to be natural. The crew froze, staring at the flickering radar. It wasn't an enemy fleet this time, but something bigger, something impossible. A massive sphere was moving through the void ahead, the size of a small moon, surrounded by rotating rings of energy. Cale's weak voice echoed from the infirmary speaker. "You've found it." Riley's heart pounded. "The Oblivion Core?" "Yes," Cale whispered. "My people built it to erase entire star systems, a god's weapon made by fools." The crew fell silent. Even Miller, who never believed Cale, now stood pale and speechless. Riley leaned over the console, his voice calm but heavy. "Can we destroy it?" Cale answered, "No human weapon can touch it. It's powered by living energy, by my kind." That sentence hit like a knife. "You mean your people are inside that thing?" Riley asked. Cale nodded weakly. "Thousands of prisoners drained to feed the core. I was supposed to be one of them." The ship trembled as an energy wave passed through space. It wasn't an attack, just a warning from the core's surface. The medic stumbled as lights flickered. "What was that?" Kyle's voice grew darker. "It's charging. Once it activates, everything within 10 light years will be gone." Riley's pulse quickened. "Then we stop it before it fires." Cale looked at him, his eyes glowing faintly. "You can't stop it, Commander." "But I can." The words hung in the air like thunder. "You'll die," Riley said sharply. Cale's tone was calm. "I died once already when they executed me. This is just finishing the story." Riley slammed his fist on the console. "No, we find another way." But Cale only smiled, sad, calm, certain. "Humanity saved me when no one else would. Now it's my turn to return what was given." Before Riley could argue further, the ship shook violently. An alarm blared. 3 Vareen warships had arrived. Surrounding them, "They found us." Miller shouted. Cale's veins flared blue, his eyes brighter than ever. "Of course they did. They always follow their weapon," Riley ordered. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." But Cale placed a hand on the commander's arm. "No. Let me talk to them." "You can't." "Please," Cale interrupted, his voice almost human now. Trust me one last time, Riley hesitated, then gave the nod. Cale limped to the communications console. Breathing heavily, the holographic display flickered, revealing the Vereen High General, a towering figure in black armor, eyes glowing red like embers. Cale Varion, the general said coldly. Traitor, exile, parasite, you live still? Cale stood straight, trembling but unbroken. You built a weapon of genocide and you call me traitor? The general sneered. You chose the enemy over your blood. Now your death will feed the core. Riley stepped forward. Over my dead body. The general's eyes shifted toward him. Human, you think your kind can stand against gods? Riley smirked faintly. We don't stand against gods, we bury them. The transmission cut, and the battle began. Blue fire filled the stars, plasma tearing through the void. The Hopebringer moved like a wounded beast. Outnumbered and outgunned but not defeated, Cale closed his eyes, his hands gripping the console, channeling what little energy he had left. The ship's core glowed brighter, weapons firing faster for a few glorious moments. Human and alien power worked as one. They destroyed one warship, then a second. But the third stayed back, protecting the core. Cale collapsed to his knees, coughing. It's too strong. Riley knelt beside him. Cale, look at me. We'll find a way. Cale's gaze lifted slowly. You already have, Commander. Me. Before Riley could react, Cale pressed his palm against the console. A surge of energy exploded through the ship, lights flickering violently. Cale, stop, Riley shouted, but it was too late. The alien's body began to shine, his veins glowing like rivers of fire. His voice echoed across every speaker. I will link with the core. From inside, Riley grabbed his arm. You'll never come back. Cale smiled faintly. Neither did your soldiers, yet you honor them. Let me be one of them. And with that, Cale turned and walked toward the hangar bay. No one moved to stop him. No one dared. He entered the small escape pod, the same one they had found him in weeks ago. Riley's voice broke through the comms. Cale! You don't have to do this, Cale's reply was calm, filled with warmth. You're wrong, Commander. I do because you showed me what it means to be human. The pod launched. Shooting toward the glowing sphere in the distance inside the core, the air burned blue as Cale's pod entered the storm. His body began to break apart, energy veins expanding into pure light. He reached out with his mind, connecting to the prisoners within the core. His voice whispered across their minds. Wake up. You're free. The core's rings began to spin wildly, the energy field collapsing in on itself. On the Hopebringer, alarms screamed. It's destabilizing. Riley watched in silence, eyes wet, whispering, Come on, Cale. Come back. But Cale's voice echoed faintly over the radio, fading like a dream. Tell them. I wasn't hopeless, then the light swallowed everything. A massive explosion rippled through the void, tearing the weapon apart, scattering its fragments like stars reborn. When it ended, there was only silence and the faint echo of a heartbeat, Cale's heartbeat fading into the cosmos. Riley stood at the window, watching the shattered remains of the core drift away. He whispered to no one, You proved them wrong, Cale. You proved us all wrong, but deep within the fragments of the destroyed weapon, something pulsed. A faint blue crystal, still glowing, still alive, and somewhere beyond human reach. Cale's consciousness whispered through the stars. This is not the end, only the beginning. The last stand. The explosion of the Oblivion core had been seen from 30 star systems away. Every signal beacon went silent. Every fleet transmission cut out for hours to most of the galaxy. It looked like the war had ended in one blinding heartbeat. But inside the drifting remains of that battlefield, something was still moving. The Hopebringer floated among the wreckage, its engines coughing faintly, its hull blackened by radiation burns. Riley stood at the cracked viewport, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. The stars looked closer now, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Any sign of him? He asked, voice rough. Miller shook his head. Nothing, sir. The scanners show fragments of the core. No life readings? Riley didn't answer, just stared at the flickering lights outside. He had watched Cale vanish into that storm of energy, giving everything to destroy the weapon. And yet somewhere deep in his gut, he knew it wasn't over. Hours later, the ship's power began to fail. The core's explosion had torn space itself, creating gravitational rifts. The medic shouted from the corridor, Commander! The radiation's spiking. Our shields won't hold. Riley turned sharply. Plot a jump route. Anywhere that isn't killing us. But before the navigator could respond, the sensors lit up again. Hundreds of red dots surrounding them, Miller whispered. Sir. Incoming Vereen fleet. Riley clenched his fists. They're coming to finish what Kale started. The enemy ships appeared like dark shadows crawling from hyperspace. Their crimson lights shimmered across the broken hull of the Hopebringer. The fleet commander's voice echoed through the radio. Human vessel. Surrender the traitor's remains or be destroyed. Riley laughed bitterly. Remains? You'll have to find them first. Then he looked around the bridge, every tired face waiting for his next words. We hold our ground. For Kale. For every world that can still breathe. The crew nodded silently, no fear left, only resolve. The first barrage hit, shaking the ship from bow to stern. Panels burst into flames, alarms screamed, "Return fire!" Riley ordered. The Hopebringer answered with fury. Its plasma cannons blazed blue, its railguns tearing through the dark, but they were outnumbered 100 to 1. Within minutes, the shields dropped to 30%. Still, no one retreated. It wasn't just a fight anymore, it was a message. In the chaos, the comms crackled alive. Commander, a faint voice whispered, distorted by static. Riley froze. Repeat that. The crew stared as the voice grew clearer. Riley, this is Kale. The bridge went silent, the only sound the hum of dying engines. Riley's throat tightened. Kale? Where are you? I'm... Between, Kale said, his voice distant, echoing as if from inside a storm. My body is gone, but my energy, my mind is inside the wreckage of the core. You're alive, Riley breathed. Kale's voice trembled. Alive enough to finish this. Outside, the fragments of the destroyed core began to move. Tiny shards of glowing blue light rose and drifted together, forming a massive shape in the void. A ghostly construct of energy, Miller whispered. Sir, it's him. Kyle's presence filled the comms again, stronger now. The Vereen control this region through fear. I will end that today, Riley shouted. Kale, you'll burn yourself out. Kale's tone was calm, almost human. Then let me burn bright enough to light the darkness. The Vereen fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams converging on the Hopebringer. But Kale's energy form spread out like wings, absorbing the impact, bending the blast into ribbons of light. He moved through space like a storm given life, his body made of lightning and memory. Riley watched in stunned silence as Kale turned the enemy's weapons against them. Each warship he touched exploded in blue fire. Silent but beautiful, the crew could only whisper his name, as if afraid to break the spell. Yet every burst of power drained him. Kale's voice weakened with each attack. I cannot hold this form much longer. Riley pressed his hand to the glass, shouting, Come back, Kale. We can still find a way. But Kale only smiled through the comms, his voice filled with warmth. You already have, Commander. Humanity showed me mercy when no one else would. Now I'll show the galaxy what mercy can do. The energy around him surged, expanding outward like a sunrise across the stars. The Vereen fleet began to disintegrate, their ships melting into dust. Every scanner went white. Power overload, sensors blind. The Hopebringer rocked violently as waves of light swept past it. Then, silence. When the brightness faded, only one figure remained. A faint blue silhouette floating in the dark. Kale's voice came one last time, soft as a whisper. Tell them, I was never their enemy. Then the light dimmed, scattering like stardust across the empty void. The crew stood frozen, no one speaking. Riley's chest ached, but his eyes held no tears. Only pride. He turned to the others. Transmit this signal to every human and every Vereen outpost, Miller frowned. What signal, sir? Riley smiled faintly. Hope. Hours later, as the Hopebringer limped toward the nearest habitable world, a single fragment of Kale's energy crystal lay inside the cargo bay. Glowing faintly, Riley picked it up, holding it in his palm, the blue light reflecting in his eyes. Rest now, my friend, he whispered. You saved us all. But deep within the fractured remains of the destroyed fleets, one red light flickered to life. A surviving Vereen warlord watching the transmission, his voice cold and furious. They think the war is over, he hissed. Let them believe that for now. And far beyond the stars, unseen by both sides, a ripple of blue light passed quietly through the void, as if Kale himself was watching. still guarding the fragile peace he had died to create. Humanity's legacy weeks passed since the Hopebringer escaped the wreckage of the Great Battle. To the galaxy, it was over. Kyle Varion, the alien traitor, had vanished into light, and the human ship that defied an empire drifted among ruins of victory. But to Commander Riley, peace felt like an illusion stitched together by silence. Every time he closed his eyes, he still saw that blue glow, the light of Kale's sacrifice burning against the black forever. Humanity called him a hero, the first alien to fight for their kind. The Alliance built monuments and news feeds across 1,000 systems told stories about the miracle at Oblivion Core. But Riley refused the ceremonies. He stayed aboard the Hopebringer, now half museum, half grave, carrying the shard of Kale's crystal locked safely in the captain's cabin. Sometimes, in the quiet hum of night, it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that refused to die. One night, as the ship crossed the border of neutral space, the pulse quickened. The light turned from soft blue to bright white. Spilling across the cabin walls, Riley stared in disbelief. Kale. The crystal vibrated, the air shimmering, and then a voice, faint but unmistakable, whispered, "The war isn't done." Riley's breath caught. "You're alive?" "Not alive," the voice said gently, "but not gone either." Then, visions flooded his mind. Alien fleets gathering again. Not Vareen this time, but something older. Drawn by the core's destruction, Kale's words echoed through his mind like thunder. "The power I released woke others. And they are coming." The next morning, Riley called a council meeting. Miller frowned. "Sir, we just ended a war. The men need rest." Riley shook his head. "The galaxy won't wait for us to heal." "Kale warned me, sir," the medic said softly. "You're talking to a rock." Riley smiled sadly. "Then maybe we should start listening to rocks, because they're the only ones who've seen eternity." Before the debate could continue, a new signal hit their scanners. Not human. Not Vareen, something ancient, harmonic. Pulsing in rhythm with Kale's crystal, Riley leaned forward. "Trace it." The technician's fingers flew over the console. "It's coming from the center of the dead zone, the same coordinates where Kale destroyed the core," Riley whispered. "Then that's where we go." The crew obeyed, though none of them could explain why. Days later, the Hopebringer reached the scar of space where the core once burned. The stars here were silent, dim, as if afraid to shine. In the middle of the darkness floated a single fragment of Kale's energy, no larger than a human heart. Spinning slowly, Riley stepped closer to the viewport, feeling his chest tighten. "He's here." Then the stars trembled. From the black mist around the fragment, a shape emerged, tall, humanoid, made entirely of blue fire and memory. It wasn't Kale's body, but his essence woven from light. The crew froze, unable to speak. Riley took one step forward, his voice shaking. "Kale." The being nodded slowly, its voice echoing inside every mind on the ship. "Humanity gave me life when my own people took it away. Now I return what you gave." The lights across the ship brightened, systems repairing themselves. "Cracked ceiling, weapons recharging," Miller whispered. "He's rebuilding us." Kale's glowing figure turned toward the stars. "The galaxy must learn mercy, or it will destroy itself." Riley clenched his jaw. "Then teach them." "Kale, we'll stand beside you," but Kale shook his head, the light around him flickering. "My time is fading, but not my purpose." He raised his hand and small shards of blue energy scattered across the ship, embedding into the hull. "These fragments will live on, part of me, part of humanity," he said. "They will carry memory, guidance, strength when you need it most." The energy around him began to dim, his voice softer now. "Riley, promise me one thing." "Anything," Riley whispered. "Don't let them forget what made humans different." "What's that?" Riley asked, his throat tightening. Kyle smiled faintly. "You see enemies, and still choose to save them." The light burst outward, filling the cabin like dawn. When it faded, Kale was gone. Only the faint hum of energy remained. Riley stood there for a long moment, eyes glistening, whispering, "Goodbye, brother." Months later, the Hopebringer landed on the human capital world of Elysium. The galaxy had changed. Vareen and human diplomats stood side by side, rebuilding what they once destroyed. And in the center of the new peace hall, a monument stood tall, half human, half alien, one hand reaching for the other below it. The inscription read, "He was born Vareen, died human, and became something greater, hope itself. As the crowd gathered, Riley placed the last crystal shard into the monument's base. It pulsed once, glowing softly, as if acknowledging them, and in that quiet pulse, the galaxy knew Calvarion's light would never fade, because sometimes it isn't blood, power, or race that defines a legacy. It's the moment one heart dares to believe that compassion is stronger than fear. And from that day onward, every child, human or alien, learned the same story. The alien they called hopeless, and the humans who proved them wrong